Great. Thank you everyone for joining, and thanks for everyone for being here a little bit early. We're going to go ahead and get started. This is our Mormons Building Bridges online gathering, and it's been put together by Rebecca and Susie and Jerry, and we're truly grateful, and Christina, for putting this all together. And we will go ahead and the purpose of the online gathering, so let me go ahead and clarify that real quick, is basically for us to share examples of people who are of everything that they're doing in their wards to basically advocate for LGBTQ inclusion and love, and trying to just open up the hearts and minds of our ward members and trying to make a difference in each of our families. So this is kind of a, we want to hear the examples that are out there. We're going to be hearing from Susie, from Rebecca, and also from Jerry and their experiences. Let's go ahead and I'm going to turn the time over to Susie to go ahead and share a little bit more about the efforts that she's working on.
Okay, so I'm Susie Augenstein. I live in Riverton, Utah. I am over the Ally Development team for Peculiar, which is an organization that I'll tell you about. But in that organization, we started a concept called Allies and Appetizers, where we try to get little social gatherings set up all over the United States where people can invite people that might be interested in learning, or people might want to share some of their things that they've learned with them. I'm going to read this one thing that George sent, and then I'm going to show you a few other things before we go on. So this is kind of the mission of Allies and Appetizers, is to create safe spaces to learn and gain understanding so we can all be better LGBTQ allies. Peculiar has created a partnership with researchers and clinicians at Harvard Medical School to develop new interventions for LGBTQ health, wellness challenges, including post-traumatic stress disorder, addiction, and suicidal behavior. As part of our partnership with Harvard, we will create a first-of-a-kind educational platform and program to better support healthy relationships between our LGBTQ family, faith communities, families, health professionals, and educators. This educational platform is being designed and created by Harvard as the Unconditional Family Initiative. So it's this really cool thing that we've collaborated with Harvard, which is taking the spiritual side of ourselves to a whole different level, and bringing all religions, all faiths into understanding that. I'm going to show you really quick. I'm going to screen share and show you this little video, and then I'm just going to show you a little bit about the website, kind of how we're approaching everything, and then there's 4 people on the screen that have already done the Allies and Appetizers, and they'll kind of share how it's gone, and maybe how we're going to kind of push forward with it, with even COVID, starting in August or September again. So let me put it on here. I'm going to just show you. Let me see if I can do it. Is that working? Okay.
Yep, we can see it. I don't know if we can hear it yet though, so hopefully you check those boxes.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, tell me if you can hear it when I press. Can you hear that?
Yes. You can click full screen if you want.
Alex with Peculiar.
Peculiar is a nonprofit focused on educating and developing allies to create safer spaces and healthier futures for our LGBTQ youth and community.
Partnered with Harvard Medical School, Peculiar has developed the Unconditional Family Initiative. This educates communities, families, and teachers on how to better love and communicate with the LGBTQ community.
The founders of Peculiar, George and Allison, started this foundation because of their son, Stockton.
This is George up here in the front. I'm wearing a ring tonight that his wife gave me. His son committed suicide many years back because he wasn't accepted in his community. His parents loved him and showered him with love, and they fought for him. But his community, they weren't there for him enough.
If I could say anything, and I know Stockton knew this, but I want everybody in here that is feeling that, that they're not worth it or they're less than. That's not true. Every one of us has this beautiful light. And just because somebody doesn't see it doesn't mean it's not there.
know, to all the kids out there, please know that you are loved, you're needed, you're wanted, and life is worth it. That there's so many people ready to love and hold and embrace you just the way you are.
Stockton, 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 Stockton.
The Story and Foundation created a partnership with Harvard Medical School.
I'm Dr. Michael Ferguson, and I'm a neuroscientist at Harvard Medical School's Brigham and Women's Hospital. I'm also the Chief Science Advisor for the Unconditional Family Initiative. Through your support, we will be able to conduct first-of-its-kind scientific research and work with world experts across fields of psychiatry, general medicine, marriage and family therapy, and spirituality studies to craft an integrated curriculum and develop supportive communities wherein LGBTQ individuals and their families can be supported to heal from past trauma and to move forward in their lives.
Through education to allies, parents, and community members, we can create a solution before there is even a problem.
Our goal is the unconditional family.
Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, I just want to make sure before I start talking. Anyways, those two guys, we just went to their wedding a week ago, and it was a beautiful wedding. Anyways, so they were kind. They've actually been helping Peculiar raise some money too with some of the things that they're doing. So if you go on peculiar.org, you can kind of see what the objectives, sorry, my kids are coming home from their break at Walmart. Go that way. You can see kind of what they're doing, but what I wanted to show you is how it pertains to allies and appetizers. Right down here, you see this part that says unconditional family, where it says the 12 sessions. This is kind of what we're doing with allies and appetizers. So what Michael's doing in Harvard is they're developing curriculum that includes spirituality that fits all of us in wherever spiritual realm we're at. But it goes over a year's period of time. You can see that there is sessions 1 through 4, cultivating love for self, and they talk about empathy, compassion, forgiveness, and empowerment of self in that category. The same thing is for cultivating love for others and cultivating love for difficult others. And so that's kind of how we've arranged it so that every month we take that curriculum and it's only a small part of the evening. And during the evening, the goal is to bring someone in that's LGBTQ that can speak to their own story, and also to bring in not only allies, but future possible allies. We don't stress on how many people you even get there. It could be 2 people, because to us, it's just about the one, educating the one, and then that person can go out and educate other people. So that's kind of our concept about allies and appetizers. We did it for, Rebecca, do you think we did it 3 times before COVID?
That sounds about right.
I think that was about, and then COVID started, and then we had to kind of regather. My dogs are fighting in the background. Stop. And so anyways, and our goal is to try to get to start maybe in August and September, even if it's a Zoom way, or possibly even with the gatherings, even if it was like 4 or 5 people in people's homes, to be able to do that. I think it's going to be really successful, because I think it's kind of getting the roots. Abby, you got to get our dogs out of here. Sorry.
Hi.
Kind of a grassroots effort to just start with people where they're at. And we've seen some really successful things. We watched one at the Pearsons that just had people that came in kind of on edge and left completely transformed. And that's kind of what we hope will happen with them. Okay, is there anything else you'd like to ask me, or move on and wait for questions later?
So I have a couple questions I want to ask. So I saw there was 3 parts there. For the allies and appetizers, do you kind of space it out in the same kind of curriculum to kind of go over these different elements of love for self, for others, for those that are kind of difficult? Or right. How do you adapt that curriculum or that kind of approach to your allies and appetizers?
So it's divided into 12 educational pieces that they'll show a portion that they've kind of, and it's kind of cool. They've got little like personal experiences. They have things that they've filmed and an educational platform. So at the beginning of it, it'll be like, if it's for your love for yourself, it will focus on empathy. Then it will focus on those 4 things, and then it will move to love for others. Some of you that have been to the first one got to see some of the educational format, which they're still fine tuning, but it's just maybe a 15-minute portion. And then after that, it's someone from the community that shares their story, and it's more of a kind of building bridges and kind of just a non-threatening approach to having people come and learn more, you know. And personally, we kind of think it's a lot like missionary work, because you're trying to invite people that would maybe not at the beginning feel super comfortable, but by the end, they'll be glad that they attended, you know? And so it's kind of an outreach like that, because if we're gonna all be there together, we're just preaching to the choir if it's just all of us. So it's, the attempt is to get our neighbors, our friends, maybe our sister or brother that's struggling to understand, anyone, and then allow it to kind of spread.
Rebecca, from the ones that you've attended, one of the questions I had for you was, what was one moment that really touched you? Or rather, what was one moment or memory that you had that was like memorable, like because of how it impacted someone else? Do you have any of those memories?
That's a really good question. And anybody who's hosted, feel free to jump in. We have Sharon, Jeff, Jerry, I know recently found out has been hosting. We had one a couple months ago, and we've actually been doing them by Zoom, or even by Facebook video. We've tried a couple different outlets. We found it's been successful, even doing it during COVID when we can't do it in person. And it's actually been kind of cool, because we've been able to bring in people from other states that don't have Allies and Appetizers in the area to just come to ours. But one moment I remember is, I'll try to stay away from saying names just in case, but our speaker who was sharing her story shared with us some really personal, heartfelt experiences that she had. And it just, I could tell the friends in my ward that I had invited that were kind of, hadn't really stepped into the space yet, but wanted to know how to love better. I could tell just their hearts were just pricked. Their hearts were just touched, and they felt sincere empathy and a sincere desire to want to reach out and love. And it created this connection between all of us. And it's just powerful. It's just powerful to see those connections formed and how it works on people's hearts. There's nothing more powerful than stories.
Thank you. Others that have had a memory or experience that you had, we'll be turning the time over to Jerry here pretty soon. Jerry, you're also welcome to share a memory or experience that you had. Okay. But we'd love to hear other moments or experiences.
Can I share one?
Please.
We first started, I think back in January, we hosted one live at our house and nobody came. And we were like kind of bummed out. And then kind of just realized, hey, maybe it takes a little bit of time to build up, so just keep trying. And then the next time we held one virtually on Zoom as well, and I think we had about 8 people. And it was so cool to have different parts of the country joining in. That's the first thing that I remember getting excited about. We had somebody from St. Louis and someone from Texas and a couple from Utah. And it was just like this instant feeling of like, holy cow, we're coming together as friends, and all with the same curiosity and same cause for compassion and understanding. We all just kind of joined in at the same time, which was really, really beautiful. And what was kind of neat, two things were cool. My mother-in-law came, which was very surprising, but very good. And that turned out to be a conversation that we had later. I didn't think she'd show up, even though I gave her an invite, and that just, it was good, because her initial feelings might be that we're spreading something other than what was intended, that it just wasn't kind and full of compassion, and it was just angry and let's pit each other against other people. And it was totally opposite. She just misunderstood. So I think that was really impactful for her. And the other thing that I'll finish with is that my wife's old friend from high school showed up, and he does a lot of things on Facebook to promote dialogue in politics and religion and anything. And he came, and he was very inquisitive and thoughtful and sincere, and he asked good questions, and I didn't think he would come. So it just was like this feeling of, okay, just a few people at a time, one person at a time, let's get together. We can go the distance with these kinds of meetings. So that was my experience. It was great. We're going to host again soon.
Thanks for mentioning that, especially that it gives hope to those that are just kind of starting. I remember, just when you start out in the allyship space, trying to share love for everybody, it can be very lonely and very quiet, and everyone kind of distances themselves from you. But when they finally start really seeing the genuine love and kindness and just inclusion of all of it, they really want to know. So thank you for sharing that. Other experiences. Any other experiences that we want to share before we move forward? Yeah, Sharon, please.
Yeah, so we've hosted one in person before the virus started, or before the quarantine started here in Wisconsin, and then we've had 2 or 3 online. And I think that there have been a few really remarkable moments or realizations for me. Our first meeting did gather people from pretty far and wide, a lot farther geographically than I thought people would drive to get to my house for a meeting. And it was still maybe, I don't know, like 10 or so people that came. But, and one of them was actually a family friend who's not even LDS and doesn't have any connection to the LDS church except through me and my family. And it was remarkable to me just the gathering in, that there are people. I mean, it's been more of that being online because you can connect, like Rebecca said, so far geographically. And we've had somebody, we've had Jerry speak from Calgary, and we had another person come speak all the way from Idaho. And it's been a really awesome opportunity just to have that exposure and ability to capture people and their stories from so far away. Because it can feel like we're out in no man's land to some extent when it comes to a Mormon community in Wisconsin and a Mormon LGBTQ supported community in Wisconsin. But I think one of the things that has been remarkable to me in a mixed way is people's reaction and hesitancy about coming to Allies and Appetizers. When I've spoken with people about the event, even people who are LGBTQ that I know and Mormon have been nervous. They're nervous to come and engage because they feel too much hostility right now about the church, and they're not sure that they're going to be able to interact without being confrontational or hostile. Or, there's people that I know and love who I've been able to have lots of conversations with around LGBTQ issues, but they're nervous to come because they don't agree with all of the things that I think about it, and so they don't think it's for them. And I haven't yet navigated all the ways to kind of help people trust in the conversation. And in general, I feel like the group that we've gathered is a really cohesive and an intimate group. I mean, it's wonderful when we gather, and I love and know all of the people that are coming. And I think that there's a trust there, and I'm trying to figure out how to expand that, because I recognize that a lot of people who think about coming are still really quite hesitant for a variety of reasons.
Can I mention something with that too? When you mentioned that someone was there that was not of your faith, and that is actually the whole goal, is to make this. I mean, of course, a lot of us. I can't believe my dogs are fighting again behind me. I'm so sorry, you guys. I don't know why they do this. They're like 2-year-olds. But anyways, they. That's the goal. I'm gonna get them. Just a minute. Go. Both of you. Go. You're gonna watch them in the background. I'll get in the way. But anyways, our goal in Peculiar is to make it so that it reaches all faiths or no faith. It's the plan is, and so I'm glad that somebody came, that wasn't. And of course, in some of our ones around Utah and some other places, we're going to have a lot of people that represent our faith. But I think it's a good idea, like you said, to make sure that it feels like people can come and feel a spiritual connection of different faiths and how we can approach that spiritual aspect of our brains in giving empathy and compassion and those kind of things. So I was really excited to hear that you got some other people.
It's such an interesting concept how repulsed people are, but when they get there, they realize that I'm included. I belong. Like everyone automatically accepts me for being here. They may not realize it at first, but once they catch that, once they realize that no one is forcing you to be here, there's no covenants to come. It's just because everyone here loves each other and they belong and they want to be inclusive. They want to share. I just love that the title of it is Peculiar, because, you know, we are a peculiar people and we should be through our love. But thank you for that. I think we're at 9:21. I think this would be a good time to go ahead and transfer the time over to Jerry. Jerry, thanks for joining us from so far away and just doing the things that you're doing. I'd love for you to give a formal introduction again, like you did at the beginning, just so everyone knows a little bit more about you. And then, then you can tell your story, your experiences.
Okay. I'm from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I started becoming an advocate, an ally, right after the November 2015 policy came to be. I approached my state president and said that I've been reading and processing what's been said and what's been done and the impact, and that that there are people both in Calgary and people throughout the church that are hurting at this time. Usually when you request a meeting with the stake, it takes as little as 2 or 3 months or up to a year to get your meeting. They booked me 10 days later. So that's how touched and important it was for them. I do recognize that I do come from privilege. I have served in many callings and had lots of responsibilities. And I say this humbly, my reputation does precede me. So a lot of people do know me. I do cast a wide net within Calgary. So that's been helpful, and that's been resourceful for me to be able to speak with and sit down with stake leaders and bishops. So since then, I've had the privilege of meeting with 6 out of our 8 stake presidencies. And again, like I said, some of these meetings take as little as 10 days, and some take as long as a year. I had one meeting that was scheduled a year in advance, and I knew about it that day, but something came up, and I missed the meeting by 5 minutes, and they rebooked me 6 months later. But a lot of what you've seen me post and a lot of what you've seen me say is patience does pay off. There is an urgency, but our audience will be ready in God's time, and that's what I've found, and that's what I remind myself is that when people are ready, we will sit down and have a conversation, and they're pretty open. My story is a little heartbreaking, but again, it reflects a lot of the things that both our youth and our young adults and our old adults like myself have experienced. And so when I speak with leaders, I do share both the positive and negative things that I've experienced and what others have experienced. I respect what they're able to understand and process, and I make myself vulnerable so that they can ask any clumsy question. And it's interesting when you do have an audience that is unfamiliar, who this is a new topic, and because we don't talk about it at church, it is a little taboo. But just like in this meeting, within a few minutes, they know that it's going to be a constructive meeting, that I'm going to be pretty upfront, pretty honest, but I will also be pretty respectful for what they're able to process and listen to at this time. What else can I tell you? Some of these meetings with stakes have also come through the women of the church. Locally, I know 3 or 4 Mama Dragons, and one of them had asked her friend, who's also a Mama Dragon, to approach her Stake Relief Society president. And again, within a few weeks, the stake had called me and said, we'd like to sit down with you. And that night, they had me speak with the Stake Relief Society presidency as well as the stake presidency. So it was a pretty sweet experience. And the more that I do it, the more confidence I have. Also by referral, a friend of mine who was from Calgary, who moved to Victoria, had spoken to her bishop. I shared a podcast interview that I did with Richard Osler back in 2018. And I received a message saying, would you come to Victoria to speak at a stake fireside? We'd love to have you there. And my stake president gave his recommendation and his testimony that that I should come and speak. And it's been a blessing for both me and for those who listen. And like I said, I do encourage people to ask the most clumsy questions. In Victoria, the best question I had was from a young girl. She looked like she was 7 or 8, but she was probably 14. And she asked me, how can I be a better friend? So that's how simple it is to reach out to those we call the saints. Another speaking engagement was I had met a new Facebook friend just before I came to Utah in 2018 for the Affirmations Conference. And my friend Melody, her and I had become very fast friends, and 3 weeks into the conversation, she knew that I was coming to Utah and asked, would you call me? My husband and I would like to ask you something. So I called them the next morning, and Virgil says, what are you doing on the Sunday while you're there? And I said, probably going to church. I'm not sure where. Would you like to come to church with us? And then he asked me, what are you doing in the first hour? Well, I'll be in the sacrament meeting. What will you be doing in the second hour? I don't know. What would you like me to do? I would like you to speak with the young men, young women, their leaders, and those from the stake who will be present at this meeting. We've already had stake approval to host you and have you come and speak. And then they asked me, what do you think you'll be doing in the third hour? I said, I'll probably be speaking to the adults. So they had me speak to the men and women, and also invited the youth to come if they wanted to listen and learn a bit more. So it's been pretty sweet. And like many of you here on Facebook, you've become my friends. And before COVID, I was planning on coming for April conference, and I was planning on hosting a couple dinners. Susie was going to open up her home, and we had 25 people coming for dinner. And I may have met Susie in person back in 2018, or maybe I didn't, but that's how welcoming my friends on Facebook are. My new friends, the Pearsons, who I don't know, who have just met me again a couple weeks prior to me planning to come, said that we'd love to have you host at our house. And we had 35 people, mostly parents and those who we recognize as friends and allies, wanted to come from all parts of Utah to come and listen and learn and have a good meal. And at that dinner, I only know one person in real life, and that was Jill Hazard Rowe. So When it's safe to fly and travel to the U.S., come for dinner, whether it's in Wisconsin, Utah, or elsewhere in the USA. So it's been a pretty sweet journey for me, pursuing my advocacy work on behalf of youth and adults. I did have some notes. I'm just going to check. At our in-person Allies and Appetizers, I had 10 people, including myself, 4 parents who have LGBT kids. One has a trans daughter who got married a year ago. Another has a son who got married a year ago. Another has a son who's dating. And another couple has a nephew who came out and wanted to learn and be able to share what they learned with their brother and sister-in-law. Then I had a friend who describes himself as being a cisgender, white, married man with 2 kids. And he came. He and his wife are good friends and supportive of the work that we do. And the night we had it was one of the coldest nights in Calgary. It was minus 30 degrees Celsius, which would be minus 400 Fahrenheit. And some people drove as far as 40 minutes away. And the sweet takeaway was a lot of these parents have been navigating their path at church to remain active, to be supportive of their kids, and to navigate friends and family. So for them to be able to meet other parents and hear their stories was a sweet spot for them. And they've made some connections that night and don't feel like they're out there on their own. The second in-person meeting we had was in February, and we only had a husband and wife. And we brainstormed about what else we could do in Calgary. And even though we know who our friends are, it reminded him that his friend was a stake president in the Foothill stake, and he sent me a referral to meet with his friend. And just before COVID hit, I sent an email, and they responded saying, "We'd love to have you come down and speak with us." And then COVID happened a week later. I sent the essays and articles I've written, as well as the podcast with Richard Osler, and they have passed that on to their bishops. So in Calgary, it's beginning to open up. We are in phase 2 of reopening, but we are still being cautious. I will pursue the Foothill stake to see if they are ready to do something online, both conversation with the stake and eventually with the bishops.
Hey, Jerry, I don't want to
Yep.
interrupt you. But I do have a question for you.
Yep.
This is more of a personal question.
Yep.
How are you doing, and how are you managing your own mental, emotional, spiritual well-being as an LGBTQ advocate and as someone that's gay? How do you navigate that, and what sustains you?
I find it interesting. Again, I tease everyone. I am nearly 60. I'm 59 this year, but I'm telling people I'm 60. I'm old enough to be your dad. I'm old enough to be your granddad. I find it interesting to be older and active and in leadership and to come out. My stake president has asked me, can I refer to you as a gay member in our stake who is in leadership, who is faithful? I said yes. And then he said, can I refer to you by name? And I said yes. I have. If anything, I would love for you to use my name and not be shy in telling people who I am and what I represent, and that we've had some good conversations about LGBTQ inclusion coming out, all the aspects that we face. So that still takes a little bit of bravery at the age of 60. I've been coming out for 35, 40 years, well, closer to 40 years. So I do take a deep breath sometimes and come out, and I'm one of the fortunate ones. I have always had a positive experience when I came out. But again, I also take my time to decide who I can come out to and how much I can share with them. What else?
I don't know if you're close enough, but are you close enough to turn your camera around to show us your garden? I don't know if
well, I'm actually okay. I'm not in my garden. I'm actually house sitting in a mansion in Bel Air.
Oh,
the property is a third of a block. It's a 4,200 square foot bungalow. But the next call we will do Zoom in the garden. So
there we go.
That's a big bungalow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jerry, so much for sharing all of that. I want to make sure we open up time for people to ask you questions, and also Susie and Rebecca and anyone else that's hosted at Allies and Appetizer. And so I'd love at this time to be able to open it up to anyone that has any questions, and this can just be kind of an open, free forum to share your experiences, to ask questions, and just learn from each other. I'd love that.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
So if I'm understanding correctly, if a person wants to host Allies and Appetizers, there is an educational component. Is that a required? I mean,
yeah, there is an educational component that they're fine tuning. We've done a few of them. It's short. It gives you an opportunity to bring in the elements of empathy and compassion and those type of things where people can kind of unite around a universal concept.
So is the goal to get them to come 12 times to work through all 12?
That's one thing I've talked to George about. Anytime you come, you're going to benefit from whatever's being taught, because it's going to have an emphasis that's going to help everyone. So, I mean, honestly, I think people can hit and miss them, come again if they keep kind of going around. I don't think you have to come every time. And I don't think that should be a pressure thing for anyone to feel. You know, like I said,
I really like the idea that there's some structure. So I'm just wondering if,
right. And there always will be. Like if we start up, like if the stuff's ready by August again, what I do is the people that want to are interested in hosting, we have another Facebook page that just has everyone on it. And that one I get out and I say, okay, this is what's going on, pick your date. And we funnel the information through there so that they can either screen share it on a Zoom or stuff like that. And like I said, it's just a small little portion to get everyone thinking about those universal concepts that we can all, you know, all religions, all people, even without religion, we can all emphasize empathy and compassion and those type of things.
So a host doesn't need to be trained per se in the educational component. Okay.
No, in fact, we'll give it to you so that you have a chance to review it, look at it. And then, like I said, the biggest part that's that most people have said is when someone talks. You just can't hate someone close up. And I think that that's what a lot of people, they just stay away because they think they should until it becomes part of their life. And so the object is to get people like me or Rebecca who don't have anyone LGBT in their family or anyone else here that doesn't. It's to get us to open our hearts, you know, not to have it take you to have a LGBT child to open your hearts, because it feels like everyone that has a child kind of gets pushed to the side. Do you know what I mean? In our religions and places. But that's why we've got to get people like us to say, no, this can't happen anymore. You know, we've got to be more out there showing how we feel about this and showing our support.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like once it starts, the idea is that this, without even trying, it will develop into kind of a network, you know, everyone's grouping together, everyone is it's like basically you're creating a kind of a network of family. And
Right.
over time, it will, even though there's like these 12 kind of dedicated classes, it will develop into just everyone getting together on a regular basis kind of thing.
Right.
So is the goal for a host to host 12 times in a row in a month? I mean, once a month for a year or so?
Yeah, I mean, and of course, nothing is ever set with our lives. We get busy, we have things.
But that's the hope. Okay.
That would be the hope. And the hope is like maybe 1 month you don't get very many, but maybe you have a good friend or something, like someone you saw in the grocery store or something. And even if it's one-on-one, it's at least one person. You know, that's why sometimes we get in the church, and I think our mentality is the tablecloth, the refreshments, and the big, to get big. This is not about that. This is about capture the one, no matter how you do it. If there's 10, if there's 5, if there's 20, it doesn't matter. Because different areas are going to, like Utah, we can get 20 to something, but in other places you can't. So I don't want anyone to ever think or compare. You know, it's super personal.
I just wanted to chime in a little bit too. I mean, I think one of the reasons why I got involved with Allies and Appetizers, and I've been really grateful for Rebecca here because she's been so helpful to connect with in this area and been a really good leader and advocate for me to kind of follow with. But one of the things that was missing, and one of the reasons why Allies and Appetizers was just such a welcome creation when it happened, was that we noticed a need, and I noticed a need for building an allyship for the LGBTQ people. There's so many LGBTQ plus people that I've seen online saying like, where is it safe for me to go? And the truth is that these conversations aren't safe. Having an Allies and Appetizers in somebody's home that isn't hosted or owned by church leadership to have to take responsibility for is so essential for people in this community to just come and be open and transparent without any fear of it being in a church sponsored space. And like Susie said, I mean, it's hard to hate somebody up close. And so it allows people to have intimacy, transparency, vulnerability, and also some safety, because I think it does lead with being LGBTQ supportive more than anything, as far as all the people in the room. And so, I mean, I'm definitely not trained. I have a lot of, I mean, I've done a lot of research, I've done a lot of listening, but I'm going to error, I'm sure. I can't, I'm almost afraid, because some of the people that are on this call right now have been to my Allies and Appetizers, and I'm afraid that they're thinking, wow, that thing that Sharon said that time was really painful. And it's gonna be, you know, we have to be vulnerable and be willing to talk to each other in a loving way to try to build that support network. So when somebody who's LGBTQ comes, wants to dip their toe back into the water, there's a safe place to receive them.
And I also think that when you're saying, you know, I might have done something wrong, we all are going to, and all I say is teach me. And if I err, correct me, you know, be nice to me, but correct me and help me to do better. And there's nobody that's going to be mad at someone that's trying to learn.
That's something I was actually just thinking about. We here in Atlanta, we have a group called Rise Atlanta, and it has very much the same premise of what Allies and Appetizers is trying to accomplish. And I think one of the most important things about it is that it provides that safe space to hear from our LGBTQ family on a personal level, on a spiritual level, where they can bear their testimony of their own belief in God and their own experiences with their sexuality, in ways that never happens at church because it's not allowed. And so for allies or for those that are new to the space to come and have this very pure space for people to be able to share their experiences, unfiltered, pure, right from their heart, we don't get that at church, and we should. And so this is a unique opportunity that everyone needs to have, because I mean, I just think about all of my LGBTQ family and friends that don't have that outlet to be able to share that side of themselves openly with everyone to fully accept it. And so that's just beautiful.
I wanted to add something too. I feel like it's definitely been hit or miss who comes, and this structure I feel like has been secondary to the fact that the people sharing their story, that's what is the most powerful. And I loved the way that George explained it to me, because I wasn't able to make it to the first meeting where they talked about the idea behind Allies and Appetizers. So I talked with him on the phone briefly. And the explanation he gave for me was threefold. He said, first, we want it to be a place where, like Susie talked about, someone who hasn't stepped into this space yet, who's maybe a Orthodox member of the church, who wants to know how to love better, but is kind of nervous about the whole thing. We want it to be a place where they feel safe to come, where they feel like they aren't going to have their, where they feel safe. It's the best way to put it. And then the second thing was when people share their stories, that opens their hearts. And in my experience, that has been super true. And then the third part is when we share that principle through the video, we kind of, the way he described it, he said the story opens their hearts, and then we pour that principle into their open hearts. And I loved that visual, and I feel like it's been like that in the Allies and Appetizers we've had. And because of that, it doesn't have to have, you don't have to have the same people show up every time. Just any time they're able to come, they're able to have their hearts softened and opened.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Hi, everybody. Evan Smith, I'm in the Boston area. My wife and I, Cheryl, we were going to start doing Allies and Appetizers towards the end of last year, and then had just with the geography here, we're kind of scratching our heads wondering how we can pull it off. So I love hearing what Sharon, you've been saying about Wisconsin, and then you had people driving from pretty far distance to do it. Question I have as I'm thinking about it is I've had conversations with our state presidency over the last few months, and I've got permission from them to kind of have a monthly LGBT FHE, which I would love to just have Allies and Appetizers be a part of that. I kind of am torn between marketing this as something that is, quote unquote church approved, because then I don't want to turn off anybody who doesn't want it to be church approved, but at the same time I want to attract the Orthodox people that I want to get there who can have these discussions and have their hearts kind of open. So is there a way to do both? Has anybody pulled that off successfully? Have said this is a church, Orthodox believers, you can come because it's a stake assignment that's been given, but we welcome anybody from all faiths or no faiths as well. Is that, has anyone done that successfully?
I had an embarrassing learning experience on that subject. I feel like when I first went into this, because I've wanted to do something like this for a while, and Allies and Appetizers was awesome because it gave me kind of the format to do it. And when I first went into it, I kind of had more an attitude of like, I've went through a change of heart that lasted several years long that took me from being a very, very black and white thinking, very, very Orthodox member to supporting gay marriage and gender transition and such. And like, I kind of had the attitude of, let's share this with everybody and we'll get them all to change their hearts and it'll be great. And the first Allies and Appetizers we did, I invited a good friend of mine, and she came, and she's very Orthodox, and she came, but afterwards, I was telling her about the next one, and she was really honest with me, and she said, I kind of felt uncomfortable, like I was being pressured to believe something that I don't believe. We had a teenager in our ward who is transitioning, sharing his story, and it was hard for her to take in. And I realized I need to take a step back because I made this journey over a process of several years. And I can't expect that people are just going to show up and have their hearts changed in one night. And so based on that feedback, I decided, I need to do a better job of making sure, I was very attentive to making sure that it was a safe space for my LGBTQ friends. But I had to take a step back and realize, okay, how can I make the space safe for everybody? And that is tough, like you're saying. So what I started doing that seems to be working well is at the beginning of every Allies and Appetizers gathering, I remind people the reason that we're here. And the reason that we're here is so that we can learn to love better. Basically, so we can keep our baptismal covenants to mourn with those that mourn. And the only way that we can do that is if we actually hear from them what it is they're mourning about. You know, if we don't hear their stories, if we don't know what it is that's hard for them, we can't learn with them. And so I kind of frame it in that way, and frame it as there's people here with different opinions, and we're not here to discuss that. We're here to learn how to love as fellow human beings. Does that help?
That makes a ton of sense.
I would add to that too. One of the first things that we did with my stake was that we had an LGBTQ fireside that my stake presidency supported, and we had a panel, and it was, for me, a really amazing experience to have within the church environs an LGBTQ supportive event where we were actually just fully embracing that these people need to be loved and they are children of God, just like all the rest of us. Let's dispel all the phobias now. And it was refreshing. And I was really a little bit trepidatious about asking for or like going through with it because of the power dynamics. And that's, I guess, like the one thing that's really hard to navigate whenever you're doing something that is church aligned and church sponsored, so to speak, is that, you know, for me, I don't have any power in that situation. To all the priesthood leadership are going to make the decisions, and I'm going to have to go along with that. And so it was miraculous that that particular event went just wonderfully from my perspective. And I felt like it was just a positive, affirming experience for the LGBTQ people that were there and for the people who wanted to commune with others who were LGBTQ supportive. With the, you know, I've been really enjoying that Allies and Appetizers is a neutral space, because that gives me a little bit more ability. But I found that one of the key tools, and I think referenced a little bit, Rebecca, was setting the tone. And one thing that we did with the fireside as well is we set ground rules. One, that you're there to be loving, you're there to learn, and then also, you know, how you engage, that, you know, you're going to be there with that purpose, and should somebody err in how they say something, you're going to respond in a loving way. And, you know, there's just some things that you can do to help people have a good conversation about it, and maybe then it kind of diffuses, because most people who are pretty orthodox in the church are going to come from the perspective of needing to defend the church. And if you're in the LGBTQ advocacy space, you're going to come from the perspective of you need to defend LGBTQ people. And that's going to clash. And so you have to be prepared, I think, with how to navigate that if you're going to have it be a church-sponsored event, because the conflict, I assume, will appear.
Also,
I'm going to pass it to Jerry real quick. Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Jerry's been. I think it's Jerry, and then Jeff. I think you had your virtual hand up for a second. Is that okay, Susie?
Oh yeah.
All right. Jerry, go ahead.
Okay. I mean, going to that, and similar to Sharon, where it was a stake-sanctioned fireside or gathering. That's what they did for the Victoria fireside. Is that the stake presidency wrote a statement endorsing the evening. So if we were hosting something in our homes, like Allies and Appetizers or an FAG, then I would request that the state put together a statement of endorsement, and that would ease the minds of those, as I call conservative members, that it is okay to come and listen and learn and to engage in these conversations, not necessarily in a church environment, but in a social environment where we'll learn together. So that's what I would do, is I'd ask the stake to write a letter of endorsement that you can either include in the invitation or to share for those who are skeptical about attending. So.
That's fantastic. I think having that sort of endorsement would be amazing to get a lot of the conservative members there. Is there any concern that an endorsement like that would make LGBT individuals who have maybe stepped away from the church or who are not in the church feel like it's not a safe place for them to come? Would they view it as, oh, if it's church endorsed, I don't want to go? And is there a way to overcome that as we kind of advertise it? I mean, can you say this is church endorsed, but we also really encourage anyone to come, and it's going to be a safe place for everybody, and that can work?
I don't think you're going to get past the fact that there are some LGBTQ plus people who just, if it has a church name on it, they won't.
Yeah.
And that's understandable. But, you know, I mean, it's about trust building. Maybe you can overcome that, but it's about building the relationships outside of just the official meetings. And if they trust enough people in the room, maybe they'd be willing to come, even if they don't love the church, just because they love the people. I think there's a hope of doing it, but it is true that, you know, if you brand it a certain way, it's going to attract or not attract certain people.
But you also remember that it's for allies. I mean, so truly the development is for allies. So in your case, you might want the people, the conservative people, to be there and start learning this stuff. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. I've even thought about doing it like on an interfaith basis. When I was bishop, we had an interfaith council in Plymouth, Massachusetts. We had several churches, and we would attend once a month and talk about things and do activities together. And I thought, you know, is there some sort of like interfaith LGBT gatherings we could do where you know, then it's less about doctrine of any particular church and just about loving, and you could even have like that be endorsed by the stake, and then it also makes people feel like they can come from wherever and everybody feels kind of safe. I haven't quite figured out how we're gonna do anything here, but COVID's giving me time to think.
I wanted to pass the time to Snow. Snow, did you have something you want to add? You're unmuted, but we can't hear you. I don't know if it didn't get fixed. No. We still can't hear you. You might want to message it in the message. Yeah, it's okay. If you message it in the message, then we'll all be able to see it, and then maybe we'll come back to that. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Evan, thank you for the great question.
Thanks for all the answers.
That's wonderful. We have about 3 minutes left. Rebecca, Susie, did you all have anything else you wanted to add in last minute?
Didn't Jeff had something?
I'm sorry, Jeff. Sorry, Jeff. You want to answer?
I was actually just clapping for what Rebecca said. It's a little emoji there, so I didn't have anything.
Thanks, Jeff. Susie?
Well, I guess one of the last things I wanted to say real quick is thank you all so much for allowing meetings and groupings and gatherings like this to occur, where we can all share our love for each other, share our love for our LGBTQ family, to actively try to work towards helping the church be more inclusive, our families and our relationships be more loving. This is really great. It feels really good. I actually haven't been in church for quite some time. So it's been, well, I mean, not just from COVID, but just from meetings and whatnot. And it's just been really nice to hear how much y'all love each other and love others. And I really appreciate that a lot. So yeah, I want to pass on any last thoughts or comments that we wanted to add.
Susie, you go ahead.
For a last comment.
Oh, sorry. You still had something you wanted to say. So I
Yeah.
put you on the spot.
Honestly, I have been COVID lazy. And so I'm going to, as soon as we get some more stuff, I'm going to get gung-ho about this in August and September, and, you know, and try to get some creative ways. And I think one thing that we could all maybe do is, if you know anyone that would like to do that, just look around and ask. And if anyone does want to, connect them with me and I'll put them on the page, and we can kind of, our goal is to get at least someone in every state, you know, throughout this year, and see if we can do that and be at least someone represented in each state. That's it.
That's awesome. And I don't want to like completely derail. One thought that I had that would be kind of interesting is doing sort of a virtual, well, I guess we still can't meet in person. Never mind. I'm going to completely ignore that last thought I had. We're still all in quarantine. Okay. But thank you, Susie. Yeah. And be on the lookout, Susie. I think you're going to post some information in Mormon's Building Bridges group and in Peculiar. You guys do have, and just for everyone's awareness, you do have a page and also don't you have a group that everyone can join as well for information?
Yeah, there's a public group, and a private group also, but yeah. And then I have an Allies and Appetizers page that when I know someone comes on, I can talk directly to them.
Okay, and is all of that on the Peculiar website?
Uh-huh. And well, if people want to come on the one, if I know they want to do it, they just message me and I put them on there. Also, if you notice on the thing, there's also an idea for a 2 or 3 day retreat that kind of takes people through all of the 12 things as another way, if allies want to learn and at least have kind of something fun to go to and have camaraderie for a few days.
Yeah, I love that. I love that's great.
When we get together again.
Jerry, also thank you so much for sharing your advocacy and your own personal journey, and thank you so much. Thank you all, everyone, for being here tonight. And I think that's everything we wanted to cover for tonight. Yeah, I think we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. We'll post this online.
Thanks, everyone. You're all great.
Stay healthy.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody. Have a good night.
Night.